Learning into team life. My name's Rachel and I work at this place. It's a company called Unruly. We're in London. We've got offices around the world, but most of the software developers are all based, co-located all together. They're normal people. They look like developers. And my job is slightly unusual in that I'm a full-time agile coach. So I used to be a consultant and a trainer, and now I just work with that company. I've been there 2.5 years, and my job is to try and help us work more effectively together with a very small group of people. So it's just like 3 teams. Each team is 5 or 6 developers, and we use an approach called extreme programming, or XP, and that's quite we take it to the extreme. So but I'm not talking today about all of our planning practices or all of our development practices. I'm really talking about how we approach learning at our company, because it's one of the things that I think makes it different, and it's one of the reasons why people like working there. So I want to ask a little bit about you, just to get a there's a seat at the front. Who's here is from Norwich? Who here is from far away? And I'm not going to define far away because that would take ages. And I don't want to get into an argument like Tom Skeet advised. So what about what kind of jobs you do? So who here is a software developer? And what about who here is a manager of some kind? Are there any people who are coaches? Okay. All right. Are there any people who do something not to do with software development? There's a few seats over this side. There's also this seat. I'm not going to sit down, so you can have that one. All right, and just waiting. So, why do I want to talk about learning, and why is it an issue? One of the things is that, well, there's a very obvious reason why learning is a good idea. If you know more stuff, you have more options, you can do better, you can create better solutions. If you have invested more time in knowing the stuff that you do know, you usually produce better quality stuff. So we build better products if we know more. And there are also some motivation benefits around learning. So there's a book by Daniel Pink called Drive, and what he talks about, or 2 of the things he says are really important that connect with your motivation to do the job that you do, is mastery. This is improving your skills to do a thing. And also autonomy, having choice about how you approach things. So I think it's crucial, or it's a crucial part in retaining a good team of people, is that they have an opportunity to learn and develop themselves. And the main challenges with learning is it doesn't really feel like what we're paid to do at work. So when you go to work, you're thinking probably, I ought to get on with the job in hand, people are paying me to do this, I might try and do a bit of learning in my spare time and my evenings. One of the things that I know is that lots of software developers, including the ones where I work, spend their evenings working and learning stuff. Who in here, so a few of you are software developers, who works on things in the evening? Okay, yes. And so that, what happens? Does that make you a bit tired? Does it make you a bit late in the morning? It certainly does with our developers. And the thing is, even though we have loads of opportunities to do learning at work, people still do that, because if you're doing a job that you really, really like, and you want to keep doing it even when you're not at work and not being paid. And so the challenge when trying to get things going at work, learning during the work day, is people do feel a bit of pressure to like get on with building the features and those kinds of things, and so they always kind of think, well, maybe I can put off that, maybe we can do that next week, or they might do one session. For instance, we had some coding dojos and then they kind of died out, and then we didn't revive them for quite a while, and so you do find it hard to kind of keep initiatives going. So I drew a picture on the whiteboard at work because I was trying to think about all of the different sources of learning that there can be. I'm going to go over here and try and, probably you can't read my writing. Right, if this is a person, there's a bunch of learning stuff that you can do on your own. So you can read books, and you can think about things on the bus, and you can watch videos, and you can look at Twitter and Facebook, and you might learn things that way. You might, if you're lucky, and we are lucky, we have a conference budget, so we're able to go to conferences. A bunch of you are here, so you must obviously think conferences are a good thing. And then there's classic training things and that you could do, and there's online courses you can do, which is really great. But there are other sources of learning that are available to you and may not cost money. You can learn from people you work with, and that's one of the things we try to do. And I'll explain a bit about the techniques we use to do that. You can also learn from other teams, and you can learn from people who do jobs that are different to your own job. You can learn from other organisations, and you can learn from feedback about the product, and how it's working and how it's performing and what your users think. And you can also learn from seeing how the system that you build works in production and those kinds of things. So there's a whole bunch of learning sources, but it's very easy to ignore them and just carry on building more stuff. So I'm going to take an example. One of the things that we do, and this is a really old practice for us, is something called gold card time. And it's like, who here has heard of 20% time? Okay, so this is like 20% time, except we do it during the week and people are expected to do it. So every week you have a day that you can spend researching or playing with anything you like, learning new stuff. So here's Thomas. He was sitting behind me yesterday doing his gold card. We don't normally sit at this table. But he was sitting at that table, and he was just zoning out, working quietly away. You can choose whatever you like to do on your gold card. So somebody was looking into leap motion devices, and we've got people learning Rust and playing with all sorts of different mobile phone apps and all sorts of different things that you might think are not directly related to the product that we build. However, it does keep people liking that as a place to work, and also it does spark new ideas about how we can build our systems. One of the things about gold card time, if you just tell people, right, you've got a day a week to do learning, a lot of people still don't really feel that they're allowed to do it. And this is something that I've heard from other companies who do have this kind of scheme, is they go, oh yeah, we tried that, but nobody really used the time. And so what I want to do is to talk about some of the things that you can do around a new practice to try and make sure that it sticks, because as a coach, that's really my area, is trying to help people stick to doing good things and not give up. And so one thing is people need to care it happens. It's a bit of a cheesy photograph, but if nobody cares whether you took your gold card, then people just we need to kind of show interest, be interested in what people are looking into, ask why they didn't do it, and kind of that kind of stuff. And our teams have a way of tracking what's going on. So this is not a tracking system used by management necessarily. This is a tracking system used by one of the teams. The different teams have different systems. I'm not going to explain what all of these symbols mean. You might infer some of them, you might not infer some of them. I bet you can't guess what Borat is. But the point is that as we track that, I'll show you later how we track that over our working time, and it just helps us to know whether we actually used our gold cards, because people are not very good at remembering what happened, really, and they kind of go, oh, did we? I can't really remember what happened yesterday or last week or before the weekend, so it helps. We also have little bits of ceremony around sharing what we've been doing. So on Friday at 5 o'clock we have gold card time. Here's Benji, one of our team leads. We have traditionally worn this Viking hat as a speaking token, and it gets passed around everybody. Everybody puts it on and they might say, oh yeah, on my gold card I did. So there's Benji showing us what he did on his gold card. It's not very easy to see on his laptop, and actually sometimes we go and have our meeting in a room where it's much easier to see. But it's not like a lengthy demo from everybody, because we don't really have that amount of time. It's more to just get a sense of what have you been doing, and then we'll come and see and chat to you afterwards. And we do have another forum for people doing longer talks about what they've been doing. So this is just kind of a bit of a sort of look-see. Another thing that you want to do, that can help, and a tool that I use as a coach, I do not want to be the person who runs all of the retrospectives. I don't want to be the person who organises all of the coding dojos, the person who books all the meetings. That would be a pain. So what we do is we take it in turns, and if there's any practice that you're trying to embed that kind of feels like a supplementary practice, you might want to rotate ownership of that so that people kind of get to know how they do it. So for instance, we have tech talks and we take turns to be the person who organises that. And if nobody volunteers, then nothing happens, and then people go, oh, it's a long time since we've had tech talks, and somebody volunteers again. We also have retrospectives, and we talk about what we did, and things about whether we used our gold cards comes up in retrospectives. So it is important to think, if you introduce a new learning practice, are you actually doing it, and can you make it better? Is there a better time to do it, a better focus? And so we discuss that. And also, what does help is that we have a manager who used to be a developer in our team and who understands the kinds of things that we want to do and does support this and doesn't really question if we want to do new practices. So this is our manager, our CTO, Matt, eating crisps at gold card time. And so now, I haven't got loads of time, and there are loads of you, so I don't want to pause and have loads of questions, but are there any questions you need to ask about, have I said stuff that you don't understand, or words that you don't understand?
Why gold card? I don't quite understand.
Ah, okay. Oh, why gold card? So the gold card practice was introduced in 2000 in a company called Connextra, where I used to work and where Matt, our founder, used to work. And there's even a paper that got written about it in XP Universe. This is not getting to the answer of why it's called gold. You know how you have different colour cards, index cards, and traditionally XP people use index cards. So we were using the blue ones for something and the pink ones for something, so there were the yellow ones left over, so they became the gold cards that we used to symbolise this. So, and we even, when we launched the gold card system at Connextra, we even had a little bit of a show and tell about the things that people were going to, themes of work people were going to do, and there was that song, Gold, that I can't remember, done by some 80s artist, played in the background. So I always think of that music when I think gold, but it's kind of a bit weird. Okay, so here's a bunch of examples. So this is something that we do on all our production code, is we do pair programming, and this is a great way of learning from the people that you work with. You may think that it will mean that you go slower, but it often doesn't mean that you go slower at all, because you have more ideas and more focus. The way that we do it is that we have tables, desks that you can move wheelie chairs around. We have big screens. People can have their own keyboards. People often have their laptops to the side. Here's Jill, she's got a laptop here, and here's Benji, he's got a weird keyboard that nobody likes to use. And you have also people in the background also pairing. And we try to rotate pairs every day, so we switch pairs around. So the benefit, or the thing that we want to have, is that more than one person knows how this works, and that because you have to explain it to a new person every day, it keeps being understandable. Lately, we've been trying something called mobbing. Mobbing is a technique from somebody called Woody Zuhl, who's in the US, and what he did is he had all of his team in a meeting room working on one story at a time. We do it slightly differently. We started by having something called Mob Fridays, and then we just carried on. So one team started using it, and then the other teams copied them because we're in an open workspace. And the only special equipment that we decided would help would be to have one of these big screens. So the way that we have it is we have like a big screen, and the team is around it, and then another screen kind of to the side, so you can see Imran is kind of not looking at the big screen, but he's typing. He's on a smaller screen, and then they can interchange the keyboards there. And then everybody else is looking at the code here. And then what we do is we do something which is called a kind of a randory style, which is we move around based on a timer, and the timer is called a Pomodoro, and we usually have like a 10-minute. So everybody shifts round, and we're all looking at the same code, talking about it. We're not all shouting Control-Shift-O or anything like that. We are actually trying to think about the code. And what we found is that it doesn't necessarily work on, it's not good for everything. If you've got a trivial thing to do, you probably wouldn't want to have 4 or 5 people doing it at once. But if you've got a tricky piece of work that might involve some architectural change, it's quite a useful technique. We also have a technique which is called, well, this is again a really old practice that I've been doing since 2000, which is to have somebody who's called the Lone Ranger, except now we have 3 Lone Rangers because we have 3 teams. They all go upstairs and they sit with the business, and they're available on a support desk for people to go and ask questions, or to talk to people about what they want, what features they want developed, and then we take it in turns. So one of those things we were tracking is on our hieroglyphics whiteboards thing was this. Probably a lot of software developers would just like to just focus on developing lots more features and not really have loads of contact with users, but it is really interesting to find out how people have found interesting ways to use your software that you had not anticipated, and a lot of the time they also don't know about features that are there. So we might make a feature and make it available, and we think, oh yeah, we've done that, but people are still doing it the old way, and we get tickets from people who don't understand how to use the system. So this is another way of learning about our systems in use. This is what we do with those symbols, and I'll just explain a little bit about it, and not heavily. These teams work in periods of 3 weeks, and so these are 3 weeks worth of work. This team does a lot of mobbing, and they have this circle with 2 dots in it means pairing, and slightly oddly, the circle with 2 dots on it in a different colour means mobbing. This team have gone with a different symbol. They think a pitchfork means mobbing to them. These people, they think, hangman nooses meetings. And this team actually kind of draw pictures of where people have gone on holiday as well. And what I would like to draw your attention to is not necessarily the hieroglyphics, but you can actually see how many gold cards people took. So with this team, star is a gold card. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So people are taking them. Imran didn't take. He had 1. And then Stan was a bit absent. He was ill, so he wasn't around. And Jill, she's taken 3. So you can see that we use it to see, we don't want people to take too many, but also we want to make sure that people do take them. Also, this team just have a limited number of magnets, so you can't take 4 because there are only 3 magnets in that colour. So their gold cards are the red dots. And if you've been on holiday for a week, you don't have a gold card. And we update this at stand-up. One other form that people might not think about for learning is monitoring live systems. So we have a load of Nagios alerts and lots of different things that are going on in our live systems. So we can suddenly see if there are peaks and surges of traffic or indeed disappearing things, which is also interesting. These lines, can you see the vertical lines? They're deploys, so they're deploys to live. So we try to deploy frequently. This is a period of 24 hours, so it's not, months or weeks, it's all the time. We don't have staging servers, we just deploy straight from workstation to live. We also don't have any testers, so we have to have a lot of tests, automated tests. And that doesn't mean things don't break, because they do, but then we see them by catching them in live. We have retrospectives. Does anybody else here have retrospectives? So who runs your retrospective?
Nobody.
Well, you do.
Yeah. Often, because yeah. Facilitation games.
Yeah.
People enjoy that.
Yeah, so people enjoy a bit of variety in a retrospective, but the thing is, if it's always the same person running it, it becomes a bit samey. So what we've tried to do is to have a practice where it's always somebody from another team who runs the retrospective, and so this is the Marmalade team, and actually this is Thomas, and he's from, no actually wait a minute, the Marmalade team. This is confusing. Somebody, this hand person, they were running the retrospective, and but they're not in this team. And the good thing about that is that we have a big group of people. So like, if I was the only person who ran retrospectives and our marketing team said, we want you to run a retrospective like today, but I said, well, I'm at NordevCon, I can't. But I can say, there's 6 other people or 8 other people who can do it, not a problem. And some people like it more than others. Some people, it took them a year before they decided they wanted to run one, and now they do them quite frequently. And the idea is that as a coach, I will give them support and make sure that they know how to do a retrospective and talk to them about how they're going to organise it. Give them some ideas for things that they can try during their retrospective. One thing that we do in our retrospectives is we print off pictures of the whiteboard. It also has things like what stories we finished and what things were going on in the iteration, because lots of the time people can't remember. So that's the paper that's on the table. And another thing that we do is we have tech talks. So I had tech talks yesterday, it's every other Thursday, and one thing is that it's an opportunity for people to talk a bit more length about what they were doing. So I did a 10-minute version of this yesterday, but I also talked about the software that I used to create this, because this isn't a PowerPoint, it's a Reveal.js presentation, and how you can create it using Markdown files. And different people, and somebody else talked about Java memory models, and somebody else talked about Maven archetypes, so it can be a big variety of stuff. And the key thing that makes it work is that it's clear whose turn it is to run the next one. So we agree who will run the next one, like we agreed that yesterday. So we know that Paul is going to run the one in 2 weeks. And probably today he's going to remember at gold card time to say, does anybody want to have a talk? And we do have like a bit of a backlog on the wiki of things that people haven't updated for a while, of talk ideas that people think, I could do a talk on that. But often they haven't actually got something prepared unless we have somebody who will remind them and say, you are going to do a talk, and then they go, oh yeah, I suppose so, or no, I can't. We've got one guy who had a probability of a half in the title of his talk, because always wants to do a talk but doesn't always get round to preparing one, so we definitely really know if Bruce is going to give us a talk, but he didn't yesterday, but he probably will next time. And coding dojos is another thing that we do. Now, who's heard about coding dojos or been in a coding dojo? Quite a few people. The idea is it's a peer learning experience, and the important thing is not necessarily how it's often really observing how you solve the problem and slowing things down. And typically, you'll have a problem that you're trying to solve together. Sometimes you have, a bit like the mob programming, you have one screen at the front and people take turns to drive. Other times people break out and they all try and work in parallel and they come back together to share their results. But the idea is that we are all trying to do something the same, and then we kind of compare results. And this, in terms of a kind of learning that we get going in our work life, it tends to be a bit patchy. It's not as regular as the other things, because sometimes usually what happens is somebody has a thing that they want to run dojos about. So the one that was this week, just the beginning of a sort of series of ones about Swift. So for the next few weeks, Greg will run Swift dojos, but they'll probably get to a point where they'll go, let's stop and do something else. And also, what you find with a group of people is that some people will like one language or technology and other people will like a different technology, so we don't want to monopolise it by just having like a year-long Haskell dojo, or we want to have variety so different people go. It does require the person who's organising them to have enough preparation. It's to have thought, what problem will we be tackling, what homework do we need, what stuff do we need to install on our machines. Our coding dojos are less about practicing test-driven development and refactoring, because we're doing that all the time at work, and they're much more about learning new things, so learning Rust or learning Go or different frameworks. So and we try to make the time a time when it's not too bad to break from a pair, so it's just before lunch, so people don't feel like they're not allowed to go. And in fact, we really have to sort of run around and remind people, say, is anyone going? Because it could be a bit disheartening for somebody to prepare a session and then nobody to go. So they do usually ask, is anybody interested? Before I prepare a series of sessions on Swift, will anyone come? And usually people go, yeah. And then not all of them show up, but some of them show up. And then, more classic thing of learning, it's quite important to be in a company where you can buy technical books and you can have access to technical books and you can share technical books, and that there are spaces to read at work. So sometimes people do their goal cards, they will go away and read, and that they don't necessarily have to do anything where they're writing anything or changing anything. And another thing that we do, well, this was literally taken last week. We've got some other guys in the office who are into dressing up in costume. So we were all excited, woo, let's have our photos taken with these guys. But genuinely what we do is we go and we do team swaps and team rotation. So when we had a bunch of new starters, just with 3 new people start at the beginning of December. So one of the things we did was, after they'd settled into their home team, as it were, they got to spend a week in the other 2 teams. So it's just like Deb's on tour kind of thing. So and it's amazing what you learn about the company and about the code base by working with other people. So we've been doing this much more frequently now. In the new year, people have been just doing a week here and there. Before that, we used to do kind of like you could swap every quarter. And what we do to help this is we send around a survey and we say, all right, in 2015, which team would you like to work on? And how soon do you want to move? And, or, not at all, and people can then give you their preference, because we don't want to force anyone to move, and we also want to have a way for people who are very quiet to say, oh, I do really want to move, but I'm not really sure. I don't want to tell my team lead because he might be sad. So there's a way of kind of letting people know that you do want to move, and then people try and arrange that. The other thing that we've done is something called Deb Exchange, and that's with other companies. So here's Anthony, he's from 7 Digital, works at 7 Digital, and what we do is we have person from our team go and work for a week in another company, and then they have one of their people come and work with us for a week. And we do that, and when the person comes into us, they pair with each team. Sometimes they have to do a tech talk, and they usually at gold card time tell us all the observations about what they've noticed about how we work. And what we do when somebody from our organisation goes to another company is they come back and tell us, they give a tech talk about what it's like to work at Redgate or 7 Digital or Mendeley, and those are the companies we've done that with so far. We don't do loads of them, we do like 3 or 4 a year, and it's a really good opportunity because we've got some people who have been in our company since it's their first job, and if you're in your first job and you've been there 4 years, you may be somewhat curious as to what it is like working somewhere else, but you may not actually want to leave the company. So this is a way of going to see what it's like in a safe way without kind of feeling like you have to leave. So that's one of the things that we do. And I think nearly lastly, Tech Academy, this is what we do when we have new starters. There's an awful lot of know-how about, I don't know, how our planning process works and how our monitoring works and how our support process works, that we have some lunchtime sessions for the new people. So every week, and this is an idea we stole from 7 Digital, so they have so the new starters, these are not the new starters that started just recently, these are the batch before, because I had photographs of them. People don't really like having photographs taken of them, and so I have taken a lot of photographs that they probably don't like. What's interesting about running Tech Academy is we ask the people in the team to prepare and run the sessions, and what we have found is that they've really found that a useful experience. To have to teach somebody about how our monitoring system works or about how the planning process works, it actually forces them to think about it. And so one kind of learning is actually asking people to teach other people. So that's and then it becomes the duty of the previous graduates to then organise the next session. So the most recent one that we had was run by Jason and Jarhead and Greg and Aaron, and they put the programme together, and they made some changes. They said, oh yeah, when we started we thought that session was boring and we don't want to have that anymore, and they changed the programme around, and it was them that suggested the rotating and having 1 week in each of the teams. And so we do make changes, and we make changes based on ideas from the team, and that's the important thing. If you don't try anything different, then you don't learn. So it's worth trying different things. So I think I'm hopefully getting near to the end. Oh yeah, last thing. One personal development thing, and I hope that all of you will consider this. If you haven't already spoken at conference, you probably could if you wanted to. It's not that hard to get a talk accepted and prepare for one. I can see people nodding, because you really have to have the courage to kind of go, there's this thing that I'm interested in, and so I'm going to actually fill the form in and send it. And it's amazing how that's the hardest part, is the sending and believing that other people will find what you're interested in interesting. But they genuinely do, usually. You can try, if you're a bit scared of the idea of submitting to a conference, you could submit to, you could speak at a meetup, something a bit smaller. And so what we have done, we had a bunch of people who said, well, as a personal development thing, I would quite like to speak at a conference. And so we've had this, started it last year, it's a conference club. So it's a bunch of people meeting at lunchtime and talking about the things that were stopping them, such as nerves and such as all sorts of different things. And then what we've done is we worked as a group, we had homework, we wrote bios for each other, people had to bring session abstracts, and now we have had a bunch of people go and give talks. So this is Alex, and he was giving a talk with Benji at Pipeline Conference around this time last year, and then after that he ended up getting to speak at Java 1, and we've had a few people speak at Agile Cambridge and Agile on the Beach and Lean Agile Scotland. So there are a lot of conferences that you could speak at, and you could probably find somebody else at work that you could do it together with if you find it too scary to do it on your own. So, and even the last thing, we host a meetup at our work. So there's monthly, we have a good meeting room upstairs, and we've got a meetup called, it's Extreme Programmers London, and it has the hashtag XProlo, and we have talks from different people. If there's somebody in the audience who would actually like to give a talk, do talk to me, because we're running out of speakers. And it's a chance to actually go and speak to other people who are doing similar kinds of things. So again, this is also an opportunity for people, our budding developers who want to be presenters, to go and speak at it. So it's but also for them to talk to other people and realise they're mostly just other people and not that scary. So and in order to organise this, initially I started organising it, but then again we're now taking turns organising it. It's not something that I'm going to permanently own or anything like that. So I think now I'm back to that, and I would like to ask, are there any questions? Yes.
Yeah, it seems like Unruly was set up with this kind of ethos instilled in it from the beginning. What advice would you give to people who are in companies a bit more conservative or bring these kind of things in?
It is true that Unruly was set up with that kind of ethos at the beginning, so goal cards and Lone Ranger things were there, but most of the other things are things that I introduced or have encouraged in the last 2 years, and it wasn't necessarily easy, and the main thing you have to do is try. You have to say, and sometimes try something in a lunchtime or after work initially, and then maybe talk to your manager and see if it's possible to do it in work time, because it makes it a little bit easier for people to go and think about making small steps, and also talking to other people about it at work and seeing if they're interested in getting something started. A good way to do that might be, after this conference you could go back and do a sharing session about what you learned here, and then you could talk about that as an idea.
Thanks.
Yeah.
How much time do you think you spend overall as a group on learning and these types of activities? Because it seems like I've got quite a lot of things and just trying to find a balance. I think it's at least 20%, and I think even though we want to try and all take our gold cards, not everybody does quite. So I think it would be about 25%. It's kind of, it sort of rounds out with all of the other things that we do, but it isn't a massive chunk out of our work week, or maybe it is. But how many developers are we talking about?
I think 22 now.
Deb Exchange, how did it work legally? I mean, you can't get someone just show them your code.
We signed an NDA, and also the people who we try to pick people who are not competitors. And sometimes they're actually using different technology stacks from us. So it's not as likely that people will want to go and work there permanently. Any other questions? It's very hot in here. We wanted to try and escape.
That's one more.
Yeah.
Did you have to kind of sell your role to Unroot, or were they looking for an agile coach?
I didn't, and they were. I was going to say, can we open the window? Yeah. They actually contacted. It's a bit of a weird thing. I was working with Matt before. Matt's the founder of the company, and he just contacted me a few years ago and said, how's your new job going? And I went, oh, it's fine. And he went, oh, that's a pity. I was hoping you might come and work with us. And so I went, oh, all right then. So it's kind of, so he was looking. It was his idea. So basically, as a founder of the company, he wants to make sure that our software developers are happy, engaged and motivated, and that's part of my work, is to try and make that happen. And I think it makes it a nice place to work, and people don't necessarily want to leave then. But people do leave. I mean, and actually some people don't always get on with pair programming. They might join thinking, oh yeah, I can do that, and then it is quite hard work and tiring, and they sometimes think, oh no, I feel a bit burnt out doing it. So yeah. Any last questions? Okay, all right, let's finish then. Thank you.